Look at everybody jumping in. Oh, wonderful to see everybody today. Have a few more people I want to have jump in here. Carolyn, hi. Louise, hi. Oh, this is fabulous. So good to see everyone. Kayla, great to see you. Hello.
Hi.
Um, we're going to let a few more people in here. Dave, always good to see you as well.
Thank you,
We
Dizzy.
got-
Same here.
Awesome. Love to see you on our Tuesday mornings. Abigail, oh my gosh, it's been a while since I saw you. Hope you're doing well.
I am. It's great to see you too, Desi. I think the last time I saw you was at Commercial UAV Expo, actually. So it's been a minute.
It has. And look, there's Jeremiah as we say that. And so, yes, good to see you. Hope everything's well for you. Jeremiah, great to see you as well. Dwayne, hello. Good to see you. Thank you for joining us. So I know great day here on the Coffee Connection. We're going to let a few more people in here. Everybody's trying to jump in here. And I like to kick it off because the Coffee Connection is all about networking, right? And Kara, hi, good to see you. And so take a minute and put your contact information, say hello in the chat. And that's how we can connect with everybody and network. That's what we're all about. And tell us a little bit about yourself and how you're using drones or drone technology. Be great. Hey, Terry. Hi. Good to see you as well. Awesome. And I think I just saw Adrian jumping in here. I'm going to be seeing Adrian in a couple weeks at AUVSI. Yes. And anybody else going to AUVSI? Hi, Adrian. Good to see you. All right. Abigail will be there. Yes, Sharon. All right. Awesome. Miriam said she was.
Yeah.
Yes. All right. I will be there. Still working out the details as to how many days I'm going to be there, but I am going to be there. Good. Good to see people are already putting information into the chat. Great way to connect. Adrian, how are things coming along? Super excited to be there and just a few weeks away. Almost. We're not unmuted yet. There you go.
Yes. So things are developing as we speak, and you're the first to know that Tesla will be our title headlining sponsor. We're going to have all types of autonomous technology, from semis to robots, that Tesla is going to bring to the rodeo, as well as a lot of raffles, opportunities to win Teslas and others merchandise that they will be giving to our participants. So the rodeo is shaping up to be a great networking event for us to see each other in person and face to face with a lot of phenomenal people. Am I breaking up here?
That is excellent news. Wow, how exciting. Wow, congratulations. Nice. So, yes, we'll be looking forward to that. I've already got my Western gear ready to go, so I'm looking forward to the rodeo. Awesome. And we got a couple people already putting their information into the chat. That's how we want to connect. So make sure that you kind of share your information. And with that, I am actually going to segue over to our spotlight speaker because this is so exciting to have Miriam here with us after I let a couple more people in. Miriam McNabb is here with us, and she is a wealth of knowledge. And I'm so excited to have her here on the Coffee Connection sharing about what are some of the leading trends in commercial drone news right now. If you don't know her, she is the editor for DRONELIFE, and I will put a couple links into our chat while she is sharing with us. But Miriam, I'm going to kick it off by making you spotlight for everyone. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I love being here and talking to you. Desi and I are kind of a mutual admiration society. We've agreed that if we lived on the same coasts, we could actually solve a lot of the world's problems over beer. But um, we have to do things this way. So thank you so much for having me. I am delighted to be here and talking to you all.
Awesome. Awesome. So let's just kick this off by sharing a little bit more of your background, how you became the editor. Tell us a little more about Drone Life and just the life of being in the drone industry.
So, for those of you who don't know me, I have been with DRONELIFE from its inception, which was about 10 years ago now, actually, 2014. We got started, and DRONELIFE is now a family business. We bought out our investors a few years ago, so it is a family business, and I have the best job in the world because my job is to kind of wander around and talk to people about cool stuff that they're doing with drones and write it down. So that has been so much fun. And it's been really fascinating to see how the drone industry has changed over the last 10 years. When I started out, I was writing article after article about so-and-so got a Section 333 exemption, and of course, since the advent of Part 107 and all of the other changes, I'm very optimistic about how far we've come and how far we have to go.
Oh, and that is so true. And I can imagine 2014, you have seen a lot of change. And so very exciting. And it is an exciting industry. And we are just in the very beginning. We're making history, I always like to say. So I'm sure there's going to be a lot of questions being put into the chat. I will do the best I can to monitor the chat. So feel free to put your information in there if you want to ask any questions, but I would love to get your input right out the gate here about BVLOS. And what can you share with us about what is on the horizon? I know you've been talking about it for a few years, but share with us a little bit about your insight about BVLOS.
So this is a little bit of a joke because we had to. I sent Desi an outline of the things I thought I would discuss as kind of what I see as primary trends in the industry right now. And I said, I'm not saying BVLO's flight because I've said BVLO's flight for 3 years. I don't know, maybe I've jinxed it. How many years can I say that this is the year for BVLO's flight? No. So here's what I think about BVLO's flight. This is probably not the year for Buvilo's flight. I hope I'm wrong, but hear me out here. Let me specify about what I mean. All is not lost. We've been looking for a BVLO's notice of proposed rulemaking for a long time now. And let's be fair about this. The FAA is not holding this up. They did their part. They got the rule out of their office. It's been held up at OMB for months now. We all know the government has a lot on its plate right now. So even if the NPRM, the notice of proposed rulemaking, came out tomorrow, it's going to take a very long time to go through the comments and work out the final text. Those of us who were around when Part 107 came out know that that was a very, very long process and, was very labor intensive. It took a long time to go through all those comments and kind of reconcile opinions on it. So realistically, I do not think that we're going to see a finalized rule in 2025. I hope I'm wrong. Maybe me saying this is not the year is enough to make it actually happen. Maybe this is the year. But realistically, I don't think we're going to see a BVLOS rule. Now, that being said, there is still a lot going on with BVLOS flight. And here again, I really give the FAA credit for this, because while we've been waiting for a rule, they've really tried to move forward on getting as many drones in the air flying BVLOS as possible. So they changed the waiver system for drone as first responder programs to help public agencies fly BVLOS. They've made that much, much simpler. They've gotten that time frame down to get those waivers, made the process as transparent as possible. They've established the commercial drone delivery area in the Dallas-Fort Worth region to get those delivery applications going. So they are providing opportunities to fly BVLOS, to get that data, to see how this is all going to work. But despite everybody's best efforts, I don't think we're going to see a rule this year. I hope I'm wrong. We'll see.
Maybe putting it out there like that, maybe we will, right? Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. If I say the opposite, maybe it'll just, it'll happen. I'm okay with being wrong.
Yes. Uh, so moving on to technology and some of the things that we think are on the forefront of tech. How do you think counter drone technology will play into this as we move forward?
So, Desi, what I think we're seeing here is really some of the essential building blocks that we need for robust BVLOS flight and for drones at scale in the airspace. And one of those building blocks is counter drone technology. And let me explain what I mean by this. I actually had kind of two elements on my list, one being counter drone technology and one being airspace awareness. Those kind of go together. But when you think about what the community needs to see as drone use scales and as we have more drones in the airspace, unfortunately, we're also seeing more drone incursions. So we're seeing the level of concern over things like drone incursions over prison space, drone incursions over schools, drone incursions over public events. Of course, we had the unfortunate incident at the Trump rally prior to the election. So we are seeing more concern about drone incursions. And as that concern kind of heightens in the legislation, in state governments, in local governments, in communities, unfortunately, that does kind of put the brakes on some of the rules that the drone industry would like to see to scale applications. So counter drone technology and the ability to say we can protect against these drone incursions is really critical to getting the approval to move forward on some of the other things like BVLOS flight and widespread drone delivery. And when we talk about counter drone technology, as some of you are very well aware, I see a lot of familiar names here, so bear with me. I'm sorry I'm telling some of you things that you are very, very familiar with. But of course, um, counter drone authority is very, very limited. So we do have some counter drone technology available, but who's allowed to use that technology is very, very limited. It's limited to certain departments of the Department of Justice, and it's limited to very specific events and circumstances, right? So you might be able to use counter drone technology at the Super Bowl, for example, or what they consider to be a national security event, but not in many, many of the other situations when it could really be useful. So, and the other problem that we have is when you talk to state, local, territorial, and tribal police, SLTT, they're going to be the first people that get the call if there is a drone incursion locally, if there's a problem at a local event, if there's a problem over a prison. Who do you call? You call the police. And unfortunately, the police actually do not have the authority right now to use counter drone technology. That is improving. There's a lot of movement in the legislation. There's been a lot of advocacy work done on this. We're really hoping that something comes through on this. It's really needed, right? I mean, the police need to be able to respond to calls they get saying, I have an unauthorized drone that's hovering over the electrical plant or whatever it may be. So we are moving forward on that, but I really view counter drone technology as a significant piece of the puzzle in helping move forward on other legislation. One of the building blocks that's really significant to counter drone technology and many of the other advances that we'd like to see is robust airspace awareness. And that's where I'm really seeing a lot of new technology, new movement come out, and that is exciting to see. Before you can, when you talk about counter drone technology at a very simple level, everything I do is at a very simple level. Sorry, guys. When you talk about counter drone technology at a simple level, right, you're talking about seeing I seeing something in the airspace, detecting a rogue drone in your airspace, identifying and classifying that rogue drone. Here's what it is, and we've established that it's not authorized to be here. And then the last step is mitigation. And most people, when they think about counter drone, they're thinking only about mitigation. How do we take that drone down? And as the federal government has lagged on giving people authorization to utilize counter drone technology, unfortunately, we've seen some local stuff come in, which is really, I don't think, going to be helpful. If you get one of those laws passed that says people can shoot down a drone that's flying over their personal airspace, I think that's going to have a lot of negative unintended consequences. But so that's another reason why we really need to get this counter drone technology through at the federal level. So while mitigation is what most people think of, almost more important are those first two steps, the sort of detect, like, can you see everything that's in the airspace at that one time? If you think about how important that is for everybody's safety, very important. And then identification. How do you identify that drone? People do use Aeroscope, right, which was the DJI product that allowed you to see the DJI drones in the airspace. Of course, the majority of the fleet that's in the skies are DJI drones, but they aren't all. And while that does sort of take care of your careless and clueless people who maybe didn't know that they were not supposed to be flying, it doesn't necessarily take care of someone who is trying to evade the systems and really deliberately trying to do something nefarious. So I have a lot of reasons for thinking that counter drone technology is super important. Like I said, I think it's critical to making everybody comfortable so that we can move forward some of this other uh, stuff that allows for drone use at scale. But I think also we need to get that in place so that we can give people the idea that, the drone is a tool, and 99 times out of 100, 99,000, whatever, a huge percentage are just useful and good uses of the technology. Just like bad people, drive vans into crowds and use that as a weapon, there are always going to be bad actors with bad intentions. And we do need a tool to be able to say we can deal with those so that the solution does not become just limit the number of drones in the air.
Fantastic. You've hit so many valid points. And, I totally agree with, we always think mitigation, and yet there is opportunity for detect. And we need to find out, is this an okay drone? Is it supposed to be there? And such like that. I've seen use cases where there have been drones flying and they can monitor them and they could see each flight that's ever made, but it's not being mitigated. And
Yeah.
so until we see a change in that respect. So we do have some comments in our chat already. Forgive me if I can't keep up because this is exciting. I love to hear from everybody. So please put your comments and questions in there. I've looped Sheila in to help me stay on top of stuff. But there was a couple of questions that Dave put in that I thought were very relevant. I asked a question about BBLOS. So some of them are going to circle back to there, but he had said that if CUAS is holding up the BBLOS, why do other countries, have they not taken the same approach? I see BBLOS regs around the world. How would we address that? Because we do feel behind when we talk about other countries.
I do feel behind that is an absolutely great question. I see two of them in the chat here that are related, so I'll try to answer them both at once. I think that there is a tendency to feel behind, but I travel a lot around the world. I've gone to Europe many times to hear their high-level summits, and while they do have movement on BBLO's flight, I think that we have really done as much to actually get drones flying beyond visual line of sight in more circumstances than we always kind of give our airspace authorities credit for. And let me explain what I mean by that. And it's absolutely right. China's ahead of us. They have just decided to allow it. They allow BB flight in many different situations. They have a different level of regulation, and absolutely they do it, and it does help their development efforts. Places like France, way back allowed BBLO's flight sort of in like 2014, right? But they were allowing it kind of over agriculture. I remember talking to providers then. And when you think about that, that is an advantage, but their airspace is very different than our airspace. Their airports are very different than our airports. So if we really looked at the type of airspace that we have and we said, who else is doing true BBLOS flight in the same type of airspace on more than just one-off bases or, small projects, I think that we are really keeping up. I think that our perspective is that sometimes that we're way behind. I don't really think we're way behind. When I talk to my colleagues in Europe, often what they will say is, we have this use-based project, but it's been hard to get off the ground. It's been hard to get it really deployed on more than just a project basis. Same for us, right? With things like drone delivery, but around the world, the FAA is actually held in kind of high regard for things like the Dallas-Fort Worth area where they are allowing drone delivery at a commercial scale. So they have sort of done a lot to get drones in the air and gather data. It's not codified into law yet. Absolutely. Do we need that? Yes, we do, because that codification sets expectations, gives people clarity for their development, gives people clarity for their market plans, gives investors clarity. However, I don't think that we're as far behind as sometimes we think. I also just want to comment that I saw Abby Smith chime in and say that she thought mid 2026. And if I had to ask somebody when I thought BBLO's flight was coming out, I'd ask her. So there you go.
Yes, and great to have Abby here sharing and putting information into our chat like that. Awesome. Thank you, Abby. Uh, and there's been quite a bit of conversation into the chat. And then one of the questions that came up was, given the comments that you have made, do you support Leo 2 UC UAS? And Tawny Smith had made a reply in there that is just spot on as well, authorizing the counter UAS without the agency training could be chaotic. There's a lot of great information in there, and that's so true. Training has to be put into place. And so, great to have that conversation going. There's another question in our chat that is from a STEM viewpoint. Do you feel we should recognize high school teens to get their Part 107 while our AAM industry is in transition?
Yes, I absolutely do. And let me kind of expand upon that. So, in my position, I have two young adult children, 121, 123, they're friends, and cousins and so forth. We have a lot of conversations about how you get a first job, how you get into an industry. And I can't tell you how many times for people who are interested in a completely different variety of industries, I've said, consider looking at drones, look at getting that Part 107 as a differentiator, because whether you are interested in forestry, in construction, in law enforcement, in environmental science, in disaster recovery, in, ocean health, or animal welfare, anything, a drone license is actually a real differentiator. We're still a very small industry, so you become somebody who can really bring something extra to the table. And so I think there's so much useful about encouraging high school students to get that certification, partly because just getting the certification teaches you so much about the airspace, about how to get certifications, how that kind of thing works. But it also really gives somebody something extra to have on their resume when they're out looking for that first job.
Awesome, awesome. Well, um, I just want to make a note that we are on social media, several different platforms, and so questions do come in from other platforms. We may not be able to get to all of them, but if we do, we'd love to hear from you. Feel free to post those as well. If we can't get to them, we'll send them out to Miriam and we can get back to you on them. But one did come in, Miriam, if you would like to address this one. What are your thoughts on operator safety with the proposal of TNUAS House Rep and Texas House Rep, State Rep, both allow homeowners and property owners to shoot down drones?
Yeah. So,
and address it, right?
I'm gonna put myself out here and say uncategorically, I think that's a terrible idea. I really do. Uh, um, I think it's a terrible idea for a number of reasons. So shooting down a drone has always been illegal because it is illegal in the United States of America to interfere with aircraft. And I think it's a bad idea for a number of reasons. One, because it teaches people that a drone over your home is something bad and something to be feared. And I always say the same thing to people when they say that, I don't want someone flying over my house taking pictures of my kids. Of course you don't. Absolutely, that's inappropriate use of a drone. That person should be eliminated. This is what, not eliminated, not eliminated, just prevented from doing that. Right. This is why local law enforcement should be able to find the pilot and say, uh-uh. Um, However, what if, your next door neighbor has a little kid who just got stung by a bee and needs an EpiPen, right? It could be that delivery drone that's flying over your house. How are you going to feel if you shoot that one down? And people in general, our communities, certainly at this point of time, and do not have the capacity to differentiate. This is a first response drone. This is a delivery drone. This is a 13-year-old kid spying on my pool, right? Right now, average person looking up in the sky can't tell the difference. Um, Also, in general, I gotta say, I think like shooting a gun upwards into the air, that could have just some bad results. Like that just seems like a terrible idea. So,
And
my
we'll leave it
opinion.
at that one, right? But the examples you provide are fantastic. And so it really does help you to think outside the box and see the value that there is for using drones this way. And you can't tell. I've said it so long, people will think they're always staring at them because they don't know which way the drone is even facing.
Right. And they don't know what has a camera, whether the camera is on or off while it's flying over your house, whether the camera is pointed up or pointed down while it's over your house. I certainly couldn't tell, and I don't think that most people can either really tell what the purpose of the drone is. And you don't want to get into a situation where you take away one of the main advantages of drones, which is that it can fly as the crow flies, right? And so if you have something responding to an emergency, you want it to be able to get there as quickly as possible. And if that's
Yeah,
over my yard, I'm okay with that.
yep, same here. Yes. So that actually is a great segue to another topic to discuss is that airspace. When
Mhm.
we're thinking about airspace, um, how do we give public awareness? What is some of the technology that's on the forefront possibly for airspace awareness?
Yeah, it's really interesting. And, Dizzy, I want to kind of tie in a couple of things that we talked about. So let me talk a little bit about the future of kind of drones as infrastructure, which I think is a really interesting application, which I had mentioned to Desi in pre-show. And so when we talk about drone in a box technology, so you've got a drone that lives in a box that it can kind of is weatherproof and it's computerized and it's monitored and it recharges. So you have those situated around your city, and you might be using those for drone as first responder. That's one of the very first successful implementations that we've seen. I know I saw someone here from Mass DOT, a shout out to Massachusetts. Mass DOT is really exploring this concept of drones as infrastructure, has been on the leading edge of this, as well as other agencies. But when we talk about drones as infrastructure, um, when you look at some of the cities that are using drones for first responder, and they're using drone as a box sort of situated around an area of their city. And then somebody's going to call 911 and the closest drone is going to fly up and go to that call and see what's going on. You need airspace awareness of that entire area. So you need the operator who is remote and working beyond visual line of sight to be able to ensure that that drone is not going to hit anything else that happens to be in the airspace. So what I'm seeing is a lot of airspace awareness infrastructure. Also, some of it's mobile and can be put on a truck. Some of it is a permanent installation, but you're seeing things like radar and other multi-layered approaches to really give people a better understanding of everything that's in the airspace. Is that not just DJI drones, but it's all types of drones, it's birds, it's helicopters, it's everything. And that's really what's needed to ensure safe BVLOS flight at scale. So we see a lot of different options on that. Again, some of them are mobile, so that if you need airspace awareness for a particular event or at a specific time, you can put something on the back of the truck and bring it out there. Or if you are utilizing drones as infrastructure, you can situate them around a city area in a permanent manner. Now, let me move on to what I mean when I say drones as infrastructure. Right now, we have different departments kind of using drones for different things. So you might have the police using drones for drones as first responder. You might have fire using drones for firefighting or wildfire management. You might have Department of Transportation using drones for infrastructure inspection, bridge inspection, traffic monitoring, whatever, lots and lots of different use cases. But what if at a state or local level, you instead put several drone in a box installations around your city, and in between emergency use, for a drone as first responder, you were able to allow sort of Department of Transportation, city planning, whoever needed that data, that access to use them in the middle, right? That really just makes a lot of sense. It's shared cost, it's shared infrastructure, it benefits far more of your community. So that's sort of an exciting thing that I kind of see on the horizon is the use of these drones, not just for one specific department or one specific sector, but for multiple purposes across a community.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. I'm going to circle back over to our chat because we have quite a bit happening over there. Marianne asked about, is that something that we have to be federally funded to give the scale and the breadth? So I'm not sure if that was
I think she just answered it actually.
okay.
Yeah, because I was thinking like, how could we fund something so big? I mean, to have that kind of infrastructure, it seems like it would be economically infeasible unless we had some sort of federal level assist. I know that's probably taboo to talk about nowadays, but I mean, I'm just trying to think like, how would that really get installed? I mean, big cities
Seeing it
and
now
huge
in sort of a scalable model. So you're
Mhm.
absolutely right. But what I'm seeing now is maybe the police get the funding to do like one small area of the downtown. And then as city councils and stuff get the idea that this can be shared infrastructure that has even more benefits than they think, maybe it'll scale out. You're absolutely right. I mean, this is a challenge and it's definitely something I'm seeing on the horizon. But I think it helps because if you have the more uses you have, the more likely you are to get state funding for it.
There's more synergy and more momentum. Thank you so much.
Awesome, awesome. So we have a question that came in from LinkedIn. As an educator at a university, how do you think the higher education can contribute?
So I think higher education has a huge role to play, and that is at every level of higher education. And let me tell you why we see, of course, there are a lot of people looking for jobs in the drone industry. I don't think that we're quite at the scale where we will be when that BVLOS flight comes through and we have matured for a few more years. But when we do, we are going to need the workforce. And so that's critical stuff. So developing the workforce is important, and it's not just the workforce for the aircraft. It's also kind of the workforce for the ecosystem. So one of the last things that I had on my list to talk about is AI. And when I talk about AI, I'm also talking about sort of the whole ecosystem of the software that drive the use cases of drones. So, when a drone first came out, it's different than a helicopter because a drone, if you think about like a telecom tower, a drone can spiral up around it and get, 30,000 images of that telecom tower. But then what are you going to do? Nobody's going through 30,000 images, right? So it wasn't until you had the technology that could take those 30,000 images and build a digital twin of that telecom tower. And then you have the machine learning and the AI powered software to come in and say, now just point out where the rust is, or point out where the bird's nest is, or point out where I have room to add more equipment on this tower, that truly became useful and really something that's driving return on investment, right? And that's going to drive scale in the drone industry. So we need higher education to expand, where we have software engineers. Where are the software engineers that are focused on the aerospace applications, the AI applications that work specifically for this, the ground and aerospace robot teaming applications? And you really need somebody to be sort of thinking in terms of drones to build that ecosystem out. I think we're just kind of starting to get there. So on the one side, yes, you need that workforce development of people who can repair drones, people who can fly drones, people who are well aware of the safety, people who can form that team that's actually out there flying. But you also need the research and the development for the whole ecosystem, equally important.
Yes, yes. And that is how colleges, universities, and moving forward, there's so much more that can be done. And so, great, great point right there. We do have a couple more questions. I know we're coming up here where we usually start to wrap things up. So I just want to address the questions. There's a lot of comments going into our chat. So it's been an active chat today. So there was one in there, shared infrastructure is a great concept, but it couldn't, that data then be claimed as public. Wow, that's a great point.
That is a great point. And, I think that these are some of the things that we really are going to have to work out. I mean, we are struggling now with a lack of clarity on how these policies work. Um, I have argued with my friends at the ACLU several times, and they've sort of made the point, like you're talking about everybody's good intentions and policies, but that's not the same as the law. So you have to, these things need to be codified. I understand that, and I think that it's truly a great point. Those are many of the areas that we're going to have to sort of work on as an industry over the next few years to actually see these things come to fruition.
There's that industry insight. This is what's happening over the next few years. Dave made a question about we don't have full awareness of all the manned aircraft. Why is this required for drones? Is it due to the sub 400 foot where most operations are happening?
Yeah, so I think that, and I'm, let's see, I don't want to make a mistake here. So somebody else chime in if I'm saying something incorrect. But you need to have total awareness because it's kind of always on the drone to look out for what else is in the airspace. So if you're sub 200 feet and you have like a shielded operations waiver where you're flying next to buildings or next to infrastructure, that's given because they figure, a helicopter is not going to come anywhere near that building anyway, so you aren't going to interfere with any kind of manned aircraft. However, if you want to fly between 200 and 400 feet, which will allow you, a different perspective, and there are reasons why you might need to do that, you're going to have the airspace awareness to make sure that you're not interfering with a helicopter coming in to sit on the roof of the hospital or, whatever else may be there.
And ultimately, it is the responsibility of the drone operator, whether the traditional aviator is correct or incorrect. I've seen many examples where they're not, and it's still on us as an operator, drone operator.
Right. The numbers don't bear it out. We've got 16,000 helicopters in the world, and we've got 2 million drones in the United States. And we brought this up at the BV Loss Arc to if a helicopter refuses to squawk ADSB, that the ownership of the onus of who needs to look out for whom should shift. And no surprise, the the helicopter advocacy groups went out of their minds and insisted that that never see the light of day. So I completely agree that that's the current reg. I also assert it does not make sense.
I would chime in there with Dave and say that I think that given the tragedy that happened at DCA, I think that this issue is hot, and I think that a lot is going to change. And as you look at the plans for the digital NAS that are out there about evolving the national airspace to be much more computer to computer interfaced, I think that this legacy concept of I don't even have to turn on a transponder if I want to take a flight. I don't need to file a flight plan. I think that those regulations are tired, and they worked in an era when there was a lot less things flying in the sky, but I don't think that that's the way of the future. Now I sound like Howard Hughes, the way of the future, the way of the future. But to Dave's point, that argument is tired, and as we look at advanced air mobility also, that it was HAI at the time in the BV Arc. They've changed the name of their association to stay relevant, and so I think that hard line is changing, and it's time. But like all things, this is messy and there's lots of stakeholders. But I do think that the midair collision has reset a conversation for electronic conspicuity that wasn't there before.
So in the case of aircraft that don't have the capability of transmitting the ADS-B out, is there, kind of like you said, is it segueing out because that older technology, we're moving forward and things are just developed differently? This is the way of the future.
Yeah, the cost of an ADS-B device, even if it's not TSO cert, is very low, and
Exactly.
if you're flying in controlled airspace, there's zero excuse. You shouldn't be there if you can't squawk. And so, yeah, that one, yeah,
Needs
no,
to be segued out.
right.
Yes. So, and that's exciting to see that, that technology, we're moving forward with it, and we're having to come up with regulations that allow the combined use case of airspace. And so, all right, so I know we are just about out of time. I do want to segue over to one last subject, though. Although there was mild tech and dual use, if you want to touch on that, and then I have one last subject that I'd like to touch on.
So with Miltech, what I really wanted to say about military technology is kind of optimistic, right? So there have been reports lately, Drone Industry Insights, as they do great analysis of the drone industry, and they've said, private investment has really fallen off a cliff here for the drone industry. And that is true, absolutely. They're doing useful analysis on that. However, I think we have also seen some real uptick in the investment from governments in the military space for small drones. And that is picking up some of the slack. And I used to say, I don't report on military. I can no longer say that anymore. I still don't report on Predator, Reaper, whatever. But now where you have sort of the X-10D and the X-10E for enterprise, both released, it's the same aircraft. So we're seeing some government funding for these platforms, which are going to very quickly translate into the commercial and civil sector. You know, whether it's used for short range reconnaissance or inspecting a power line, it's the same aircraft. We're also seeing a shift in government to wanting to fund more sort of smaller, flexible platforms. So they're willing to fund the development of sensors and pieces and, you know, sort of more of an ecosystem, batteries, power sources, and things like that. So I think that that is actually sort of hopeful for not only the military drone industry, but also the commercial industry, because government is really picking up some of the slack and paying for that development.
Wonderful, wonderful. We did, go ahead. Did you have something you were going to throw in there? No, okay. We did have a comment in there that I want to do a big shout out to Teresa, who mentioned that the University of Nevada in Reno just received a large grant, and it jumped away from me, to develop their aeronautical engineering program. So circling back to the conversation we were having a second ago, that's great news. I want to do a shout out there. Kara asked about, could you share if you're attending any of the conferences that are coming up, and which ones you might find most impactful?
Sure. I will be at both AUVSI Exponential in Houston. Really looking forward to that. Hope to see a lot of you there. And I will be attending Commercial UAV in September. Those are really two of the big ones for our industry to attend if you want to kind of keep on top of things. They have great keynote speakers. It's really a great way to sort of keep up with the themes. You know, just recently we attended Drone Show Korea overseas, which is also a great way to, if you know, if you have the opportunity to kind of see what the what's happening over in Asia. And I know Commercial UAV is now teaming up with what was Amsterdam Drone Week, and so we have AUVSI and Commercial UAV both in Europe next year. So looking forward to that too.
Again, 2026 on the horizon, and it's actually speeding up quite quick. But awesome, great stuff coming up within the next year or two. So,
Yeah.
let's wrap this up because we're getting near the top of the hour. Can you tell us about the story you won't write?
I can.
Okay, here we go.
I want to say this very carefully. So, when it comes to the issue of banning Chinese drones, the drone industry really finds itself in a very difficult and complicated situation. And we are in a situation like, as in any complex issue, there are multiple truths at the same time. So those of us who have been in the industry for a long time know and respect many of the people at DJI. They're good, smart, innovative people. They supported the drone industry in becoming what we now know. They aren't nefarious. They're not spying on anybody. That's true. And to deny, you know, the very significant role that DJI has had in developing the industry here in the US would be false. You know, they have been and continue to be a very important driver in setting standards for functionality and safety and form factor. Unfortunately, it's also true that the US is engaged in geopolitical conflict and trade war with China. That's also an undeniable truth. And while the issue over data security, IP theft, that's definitely kind of a gray area that people want to discuss. What's unfortunately not gray is China does support state-backed hacking operations on U.S. infrastructure. That's just open information, published news. Small drones are increasingly important for military defense. And, you know, they can represent a potential vulnerability. So things change, firmware has to be updated, functionality can be changed in an hour. And the law in China does state that companies must allow government access to servers upon request. Again, that's not kind of opinion, it's not gray area, it's just published fact. So security concerns in some form are not entirely unreasonable or false. But that leaves us in a place where people are really getting hurt due to blanket Chinese drone bans. Their businesses are impacted. We can't deny that. There's a gap in functionality and price point. I think it's closing, and I think it's actually closing pretty rapidly, but it does exist. So when it comes to writing stories about this issue, I try, and sometimes I fail. I absolutely acknowledge that. But I really try to recognize both sides of the problem with respect. And the story I will not write is that I will not come out against any particular company or organization on either side. And that's been a lesson hard learned. And the reason for this is not that I don't have a position. I have a strong position. I'm pro drone industry, period. And if we set up a situation where we're saying this company's bad, this organization's bad, we risk setting up a situation where the users are also divided. This police force bought the US option is, against this police force on LinkedIn. That's totally not what we want. At the end of the day, we want all of the public safety agencies to be able to fly drones that work and that they can afford. And so how we get to that is going to take all of us to figure out and all of us to advocate. And in addition, I don't write those stories because the written word has too much lasting power for an industry that's this young. When people remember that the drone they tried out 2 years ago wasn't great, sometimes they're less willing to try out the newest model, which could be totally different. Things change in this industry. Companies merge, CEOs leave, models change, manufacturing, whatever. So if you write off a company because their first attempt failed, you're actually kind of slowing down progress, right? And slowing down that innovation. And finally, and I'll shut up here soon, I promise. At the end of the day, I think this industry really needs to take the universal big picture. We are still a tiny nascent industry, and we need everybody at the table to advocate not for one drone versus another drone, but for drones in general. So to most people in the world, it's not this kind of drone versus that kind of drone, but it's whether or not there's a drone flying over your house. They don't care what kind of drone it is. If somebody's arguing about whether or not they should be able to shoot down a drone flying over your house, they don't care where that drone was made from. So we need to not allow ourselves to be divided and conquered, right? We can't divide ourselves. We need everybody at the table to advocate for drones in general. So trying not to take sides, that's not a very popular place to be. Neutrality is a narrow bridge. Everybody's trying to push you off onto their side. But I really hope that as an industry, we're going to be able to weather this out and continue to grow.
Very impactful words. Very, very. What a fantastic way to wrap up this show. I love what you've said. I love all the information that you have shared with us. You are so insightful. It's been an amazing conversation. Thank you so much. There's a lot of information in here. Everyone is saying thank you. I encourage everyone to definitely save the chat because there has been some great information in here. And if you're not familiar with how to do that, there's 3 dots, upper right-hand corner. First option is save the chat. It was great talking with you, Miriam. Thank you.
Thank you, Desi. I love talking to you too. Hope to see you on the road.
Oh, I'm going to see you in a couple weeks over
Great.
there at UBSI. Awesome. Well, thank you everybody for joining. Again, we'll get out any other comments and questions that may have come through from social media platforms. Miriam, thank you for your time and for sharing your knowledge. All right. Bye, everybody. And we'll see you next week. We have Jared Janik here with us next week. So awesome. All
Thanks,
right.
Miriam.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Great job, Miriam.